Norway hides its xenophobic and anti-Islamic sentiments beneath the pristine and ideal lack of color prejudice. Politicians ignore the threat of right-wing terrorism, putting it up to lone wolf lunatics. Somehow living in a majority white country does not prejudice Norwegians against black people, yet the same people fear the growing population of Muslims. Curiously, their orientation has prescribed to them an acceptance of one, but not the other. Could it be that the anti-Islamic and anti-immigrant attitudes disguise the underlying racism in the country? In the winter of 2007, my father's work in the oil industry took me and my family to Norway. I would spend 3 years there, learning and growing with the culture that surrounded me. Norway was a safe place, with a consistent homicide rate of about 0.5 crimes per 100,000 people and an incarcerated population of about 3,500 people. Norway could be considered one of the safest countries in the world. What I did not recognize as a 6-year-old was the surprisingly common assertion that Norway is not only a safe place, but also considered a racial paradise. Norway is a predominantly white country, with the CIA World Factbook claiming it is ethnically 82.3% Norwegian and 8.3% other European, which leaves only 8.5% of people in Norway not ethnically of white European descent. This is like standing in a room of 92 white people with only 8 people of color, but make it an entire country.
Something new and ugly raises its head in Britain. In Notting Hill Gate, only a mile or two from London's West End, racial violence. An angry crowd of youths chases a Negro into a greengrocer's shop, while police reinforcements are called up to check the riot, one of many that have broken out here in a few days. The injured victim, a Jamaican, is taken to safety. But the police have not been able to reach all the trouble spots so promptly, and the quietest street may flare up at any moment. Most disturbing feature of the riots is the suspicion that not all the troublemakers are locals. Some of the gangs who break windows or throw bottles or burning torches have arrived by car.
Michael X, a leader in the London civil rights movement of the 60s and a self-convert to Islam, spent time in Norway. He remarked in his autobiography that color prejudice doesn't seem to exist for Norwegians.
We just got cheesed off with it, you know. It was getting in my ears. It's just the same way I grew it, you know. I just felt like having it. Now I feel like having it short.
It's for the new year.
We wanted a new year ahead, you know.
I don't want to sound unkind, but don't you think that this may have been construed as just another Lennon stunt?
Well, we tried to keep it quiet. I don't care. It came useful for this, you know. Yeah, more stunts the better, but when we cut it, we didn't think of that. We were just cutting it in private in the
In 1965, Michael X founded a black militant group based in London called the Racial Adjustment Action Society, which garnered a membership of 45,000 people. In 1967, he was charged for hate speech under the Race Relations Act of 1965 and was jailed for a year. After he was released, Michael suddenly announced he was abandoning the Black Power movement and returned to Trinidad to start a commune. It was at this commune where his reputation was irreparably damaged. A few years after John Lennon came to visit the commune, 2 bodies were found on the grounds. After a 3-year trial, Michael X was found guilty of the murder of Joe Scarrett and Gail Benson and sentenced to death. His files in the British National Archive will remain closed until 2054. Since his autobiography, where he stated his appreciation for the apparent lack of racism in Norway, was written before he stepped down from his status as a black revolutionary, we can take his statements as credible, separating his autobiography from the crimes he committed in later years. Norway is also a majority Christian country, having only 3.2% of their population being Islamic, another 2.5% of the population being another religion, and non-believers making up a little bit more than 10%. But in spite of these statistics, Norway remains an unprejudiced country, or so it would seem. Underlying the trusted testimonials of Black Norwegians and foreigners lies a dangerous sentiment in far-right-wing Norwegians. Since 2011 and the growth of the Muslim population in Norway, the Anti-Immigration Progress Party has become the second largest party in the Norwegian parliament. So what is the difference in the relationship between white people and people of color versus Christians and Muslims? People are afraid of terrorist attacks, even in Finland, another very similar Scandinavian country that was voted in 2019 to be the happiest country in the world. In the same year, 61% of Finns say they are worried about the future of the country because of the immigrant population growth. If you look at the statistics, though, in Scandinavia, there are more major domestic terrorist attacks perpetrated by white nationalists than any Islamic extremist group.
Tonight, police are investigating the attack on a Norway mosque as an attempted terrorist attack, as new details emerge about the heroic bystanders who helped thwart a gunman when he opened fire at the Al-Noor Islamic Center.
Start to fire.
Explaining how he grabbed the gunman, throwing him so that the gun fell out of the suspect's hand.
He was wearing this brown leather belt with a lot of bullets on it. He came very full prepared.
Police describing the suspect as a white Norwegian citizen, around 20 years old. He had expressed extreme right-wing views.
The 2019 attack on a Norwegian mosque exemplifies the secret resentment and violent urges held by some of Norway's white nationalists. On July 22, 2011, terrorist Anders Behring Breivik bombed the office of the Prime Minister in Oslo, then traveled to Utøya Island, which was holding a Social Democrat youth camp. Dressed as a cop, Breivik shot and killed 67 children in a horrific attack before he was under police custody. He claims that his atrocities were acts of self-defense against an Islamic colonization of Europe. He was also previously connected to the aforementioned Progress Party. Looking further into the policies of the Progress Party reveals that xenophobic resentments are not as uncommon as it may seem. The right-wing populist group is the second biggest in the Norwegian parliament. Running on anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim rhetoric, the party is seemingly the most successful active right-wing political group in Europe. Norway continues to play down the threat of these right-wing extremists. The media looked at Anders Breivik as an exception, as a unique monster. Breivik should instead be looked at as a progression of the political populist groups that are becoming more and more popular in Norway. In the 2019 threat assessment assembled by the Norwegian Police Security Services, otherwise known as the PST, claimed it was very unlikely that there will be a right-wing extremist attack, which of course was followed by the Mosque attack. Norwegian prejudice against Muslims has developed from the fear of losing the majority rule that Christians have over the country. While the numbers of Black people and Muslim people living in Norway are similar, the Norwegian media focuses on the supposed influx of the Islamic religion. It is taken for granted that white people make up most of Norway. Adding to this, Black people are close to non-existent in Norwegian media. The overrepresentation of the Islamophobia-charged, frightening aspects of Islamic immigration majorly contribute to the disproportionate prejudice. If Norway continues to be praised for its veneer of a racial paradise, white nationalists will continue to be violent, and the country will cease to be safe.